With the 3 Kanto starters now finished in Pokemon Moon, we need to see how the Route 1 birds of the Kanto region do, Butterfree and Beedrill. How well can these two beat Pokemon Moon, and which one is going to be faster? Let's find out. We're going to be starting off with Butterfree first, and we'll move on to Beedrill after we beat Hala. But while we are on Butterfree, let's take a look at the stats. We have 60 HP, 45 attack, 50 defense, 90 special attack, 80 special defense, and 70 speed. And on our starting moveset, we start off with Gust and Confusion, and then throughout the rest of the levels, at level 13 we get access to Poison Powder, Stun Spore, and Sleep Powder all at the same time. And Sleep Powder is going to be our main key for a lot of fights, including a special use from the Z Crystal, which if you guys have seen the Venusaur video, you'll know exactly what it is. And then Psybeam at level 17, followed by Silver Wind, Supersonic, Safeguard, Whirlwind, Bug Buzz, Rage Powder, Captivate, Tailwind, Air Slash, and Quiver Dance. And some of our good TMs include Toxic, Venoshock, Hidden Power, Hyper Beam, Roost, Solar Beam, Return, Psychic, Shadow Ball, Aerial Ace, Facade, Thief, Energy Ball, Acrobatics, Infestation, Dream Eater, and U-Turn. For Butterfree, our 2 ability choices are our ability Compound Eyes and our hidden ability Tinted Lens. I ended up going with Tinted Lens. It basically turns resisted moves into neutral moves, 4 times resisted moves into regular resisted moves. So basically Bug Buzz will do neutral damage on a target like Steelix. Compound Eyes on the other hand would increase our accuracy to give us a 93% Sleep Powder, but to be fair, I think Tinted Lens is going to be the far better ability. And for our nature, we're going to be going with Timid Nature for extra speed and less physical attack. Most Pokemon in Pokemon Moon need the extra speed, and Butterfree is no exception. And our hidden power typing is going to be Hidden Power Ground. I've already recorded a ton of Pokemon Moon playthroughs at this point, and based on my own experience, Hidden Power Ground tends to be the most useful hidden power, mainly because it gives an answer to Pokemon like Olivia's team and Magnezone. Although I wish I could have it for the teacher Emily in the trainer school because she has a Magnemite, and I do get 1 reset here because I have to hit it with either a resisted Confusion or a 4 times resisted Gust, which because of Tinted Lens, Confusion's neutral while Gust is just regular resisted. Even though normally Melee Island is generally the easiest island out of the 4, Butterfree ends up having a severe problem against Lima. I can easily defeat his Yungoost, but because of the fact I replaced the grass starter, his Smeargle has Ember with Technician, so it is doing a massive amount of damage, and I'm at the point where if I beat the Yungoost but lose to Smeargle, I'm just going to accept the Blackout and keep the XP, which is definitely not going to help its real time, but at the same time, what other choice do I have? It takes me until 6 Blackouts into the run until I can finally defeat Lima, and then we can head our way towards the normal trial. Unfortunately, Confusion is not going to help us there, so we're going to have to spam Gust on it, but at level 13 we'll get access to Sleep Powder and Poison Powder, so we're going to go ahead and use this on Alolan Raticate. But before we talk about Alolan Raticate, let's switch on over to Beedrill and look at its stats and move pool. Beedrill has 65 HP, 90 attack, 40 defense, 45 special attack, 80 special defense, and 75 speed. So having extra physical attack is definitely way more preferable compared to special attack. And the reason why is because of Swords Dance. But in order to use Swords Dance well, we're going to need access to some good physical moves, and Beedrill does definitely get some good options. We start with Twin Needle and Fury attack, and then at level 14 we'll get access to Rage. It's kind of like our discount Swords Dance until we can actually get the TM. Then followed by Pursuit, Focus Energy, Venoshock, Assurance, Toxic Spikes, Pin Missile, Poison Jab, Agility, Endeavor, and Fell Stinger. And via TM, just like Butterfree, we also get access to Toxic and Venoshock and Hyper Beam and Roost, but we also get access to Brick Break, which is going to be very good. We can get that in Verdant Cavern right before the Raticate, and Raticate is 4 times weak to fighting moves. And we also get Sludge Bomb, which is a special move, then Aerial Ace, Facade, Thief, Round, False Swipe, Brutal Swing, Acrobatics, Payback, Giga Impact, X-Scissor, Infestation, Poison Jab, and U-Turn. You may be wondering why I made great mention of False Swipe. This will allow Beedrill to do SOS training in the wild to gain EVs very fast, and I don't have to do it earlier on. I can just do it later on, because False Swipe will always leave the target at 1 HP, and Pokemon that are in red health have a very much increased chance of calling for help. With most Pokemon that don't get it, I often have to teach a very weak move, or do the training when I'm at a lower level. But thankfully Beedrill won't have to worry about that. And since we've already talked about Butterfree and Beedrill's stats, I'm going to bring up a side-by-side comparison. Butterfree has 5 less HP, 45 less physical attack, and 5 less speed, while Beedrill has plus 5 HP, plus 45 attack, and plus 5 speed. These two are sort of like inverts of each other. Just swap the attack for the special attack, but for some reason with Butterfree, while it loses the 5 HP and 5 speed, instead with Beedrill, it just loses 10 points in its defense stat instead, which is definitely going to serve as a problem for a lot of the endgame fights that rely on physical moves. And there's going to be one other thing that's going to be in the disadvantage of Butterfree. Butterfree has a 4 times weakness to rock moves, while Beedrill is only going to be 2 times weak. That is going to create a massive difference at the Olivia fights and the fight with Professor Kukui. But we don't have to worry about that right now. Why don't we have both Pokemon take on Alolan Raticate, and then follow it up with Hala. Starting off with Butterfree, I enter the fight at level 14 and I go ahead and use a single sleep powder. But here's a fun fact, even if the totem is sleeping, it can still call for help. But that's fine though, whether the help shows up or not. I can just knock out the Raticate with Gust as well as the helper Rattata. And here's the fun fact I've mentioned earlier, during an SOS battle you gain double the EVs. So just the fact that this Raticate summoned a Rattata, I'm going to go from earning 2 speed EVs from the Raticate to a grand total of 6 in total, 2 from the Rattata and 4 from the Raticate, and Gust can easily take care of both of them. But Beedrill on the other hand, it just completely one-shots Raticate. So as of right now, if we look at the splits, Beedrill is definitely at a huge time lead because it did not have to struggle against Lima. And as both Pokemon make their way towards Hala, the first island kahuna, I need to mention Beedrill's abilities. We're going with Swarm over Sniper, its hidden ability. Sniper basically boosts the damage from critical hits, but critical hits are a 1 in 24 chance in Generation 7. It's really not worth it, so I'm going with Swarm for a 50% boost in bug type damage when I'm at low health. Our hidden power typing is going to be Hidden Power Dark, meaning we're effectively not using hidden power, so we have perfect stats. And our nature is going to be Jolly instead of Timid, plus speed minus special attack. I do not want to lower physical attack, while Butterfree did not want to lower special attack. And I do think between the two, they're both honestly going to have an easy time at Hala. They both 4 times resist fighting moves. But why don't we go ahead and look at Hala? Let's start off with Butterfree. He leads off with Mankey. I'm going to go ahead and use Gust for the 2-shot while it just uses Pursuit followed by Focus Energy. Next up is the Makuhita. I'm going to go ahead and use a Gust on it, and it lives at about half health. Honestly, you may be wondering, hey, is Gust better than Confusion? Because of Stab, the answer is no. And even though the Crab Brawler is a 2-shot as well, since we 4 times resist fighting, he's not going to use all-out plummeting on us, so we can go ahead and defeat Hala pretty easily and get ourselves a split of 24 minutes and 53 seconds. With Beedrill, instead of holding on to the Sharp Beak like Butterfree did to increase the power of Gust, we're actually going to be using the Normalium Z. My plan is just to use a bunch of Rages on the Mankey to build up my attack stat by 2 stages. Building it at 2 stages is what will allow me to use Breakneck Blitz based on Fury attack, turning into a 100 power move one-shotting it. Last up is the Crab Brawler. I can just use Brick Break for the 2-shot and it won't use its Z move. And Beedrill gets a split of 23 minutes and 5 seconds. So basically after the first island is finished, Beedrill has a lead of 1 minute and 50 seconds. However, Pokemon Moon is a very difficult game to solo run, and remember the next island has a lot of rock types coming up next. The next island, Akala Island, has 4 major events: the Totem Trial against Salazzle, the Totem Fight against Lurantis, and first of all, the Totem Fight against the Wishy-Washy. And to end it all off with the first Olivia fight. We're going to go ahead and just start talking about Beedrill for a bit, and then as soon as we beat Olivia with Beedrill, we'll talk about what Butterfree did. As soon as I immediately get access to Tauros, I'm going to hunt around in the grass just south of Iggy Town behind the rocks here. This grass has a 5% chance of Munchlax, and we're going to need the leftovers. You may be wondering, why am I wasting my time getting the leftovers? The answer is both Butterfree and Beedrill need to do a lot of EV training, and having the leftovers can let you extend the EV training via SOS battles for a long time without access to the Pokemon Center. Plus, the leftovers are going to be very great in general for Pokemon with pretty low defenses. Thankfully for Beedrill though, my luck wasn't too bad. It only took me about 3 minutes to find it. There's going to be some other items I get as well. I go back to the Melee Meadows and get myself the Poison Barb. This will boost the power of poison type moves by 20%. Then I will take the Tauros to 10 Carat Hill and pick myself up the TM for acrobatics. It is kind of insane how early they give you this powerful move. If you're not holding an item, it's an effective power of 110. Now just imagine if a flying type gets it. Oh my god. And since we already have the leftovers, we're effectively just going to skip the Shell Bell for now. The differences between Shell Bell and leftovers for SOS training is that leftovers let you heal during SOS training while spamming stalling moves like Workup while you wait for the target to summon another helper. You will get healed with leftovers during that, but with Shell Bell you do not. And if you get unlucky with them not summoning helpers, they can just effectively kill you because Shell Bell cannot heal you. Because it is still a time investment to get, I'm only going to get it for Pokemon that need to do a lot of EV training, or for Pokemon that have very low defenses, like Beedrill. Inside Hiya City, I can talk to this person right here and get access to the first rare candy in the game. Then I have to defeat Cena from Kalos. Things don't really go the best. I mean, thankfully you're not required to win anyway. She would have been great XP if I could beat her though. And with Cena defeated, we make our way to Paniola Town, destroy the How fight right here, and then just outside of the town, inside the little ranch right here, I can fight this guy's Tauros and get myself the Scope Lens. Scope Lens only increases your crit modifier by 1, while Focus Energy increases it by 2. But using Focus Energy with a high crit move is going to be way better. But if not, I can always just sell the Scope Lens for $2,000 and just keep the money for vitamins. And now, we gotta go defeat Gladion really quick, thank you. And now we've gotta take on Wishy-Washy. Focus Energy is going to be really great for Wishy-Washy because a critical hit will bypass its defense boost. I'm using the Scope Lens and Focus Energy at the same time during this fight, having a grand total of +3 to my crit modifier. In Generation 7 onwards will give me a guaranteed critical hit with any move, which is the reason I actually needed the Scope Lens. But here's another thing, if you're using Focus Energy with a high crit move like Shadow Claw, you don't need the Scope Lens, it just becomes an auto crit move. After rescuing this Drifloon from Team Skull, I can smash this boulder right here and get myself another rare candy. Inside of the Royal Avenue, I can get a rare candy inside of this wood pile, do the whole Royal Avenue battle stuff nobody cares about, and then we can enter the Thrifty Mega Mart, give $1,000 to this quote-unquote Hypno, and get ourselves the TM for rest. You can also use this opportunity to just mass purchase a bunch of repels and potions because when you're in here you get 50% off everything. There's also an HP up behind the Mega Mart as well. You could either use it if you need the HP EVs, or if you're going to sell it for money. However though, we're not ready to take on the fire trial yet for pretty obvious reasons. So what I'm going to do is backtrack to Paniola Town, head into the route south, and then go into this grass, find myself some Picky Peck, and then combining False Swipe, along with some weak stalling moves like Rage, we're going to be able to SOS train for quite a while. I mean, looking back at this, I really should have a stalling move here, but I just don't have anything right now. I have to keep Twin Needle, I have to keep Brick Break, and I have to keep Rage. This is going to make things a little annoying, but honestly, looking back at this, I should have had Hidden Power Ground, so that way I could just stall the fight, effectively doing 0 damage to the opponent Picky Pecks. You may be wondering what the EVs are I need for the end of this playthrough. We need 28 HP EVs, which is kind of irrelevant, we'll get that naturally. 140 attack, 100 defense, and 168 speed. Yeah, I did tell you this region has very fast Pokemon in it, even though most of the Alola decks have low speed stats, it really doesn't make any sense. And since we're going to need training for the fire trial anyway, it just makes the most sense to just do the attack training now. I can just do the speed training later. I continue the training on Picky Peck until I get to 132 attack EVs. This is going to be more than enough to head towards the fire trial. I'm fighting the Marowaks at level 25. However though, I am still not ready to take on the fire trial just yet. I did mention earlier, I need 100 defense EVs. I could just use iron to get to that. Looking back in my notes, I need level 34 for Olivia. So while this training isn't exactly necessary for the Salazzle, it's going to be necessary in the end for Olivia. I need a pretty decent level. So I'm going to take advantage and fight these Marowaks, not only for defense, but also for the experience. Unfortunately though, after a little bit, I did have to stop training on Marowaks and just fight wild Cubone in the grass. The reason I'm not able to fight the Marowaks that well is because they have moves like Flame Wheel, which just does so much damage to me, and I don't have any dark type moves to just spam on them. I theoretically could have found a way to keep Pursuit and just use an Expert Belt or something, but to be fair, Cubone also has a call rate of 15, and they do have a rare chance of calling for a Kangaskhan, which gives HP EVs. So this is going to be another alternate way for me to get defense, although not so much experience though. As soon as I get to level 26 off the Cubones, I am able to learn the move Assurance. This will allow me to train on the Marowaks better, so I'm going to go back to training on these guys for a bit. I continue training on the Marowak until I get to level 30. With level 30 obtained, I am close to 100 defense EVs, but my level is going to be more than good enough to take on Olivia by the time I get to her. So I'm actually going to solve the puzzles correctly here, fight the Hiker with the Magmar, and take on the Totem Salazzle. Salazzle has a special defense boost, which is going to be a problem for Butterfree, but not for Beedrill. Unfortunately though, when I was fighting the Magmar on the Hiker, I did get burned because of Flame Body, which just gives me a very quick doom. When I do get back here on the next attempt, without being burned by the way, an itemless Acrobatics can one-shot both of them. On Route 8, on my way to the Lurantis trial, I get to this berry tree and get myself a cherry berry for later. These are generally pretty good berries to keep, along with Chesto berries. I try to talk to most of the trees throughout the region, just to see if I can find those. I'm not even going to play an intro for the Lurantis fight, because look at this, an itemless Acrobatics almost one-shots the thing. So yeah, there's really not much to worry about here. And now that we have cleared out the 3 trials on this island, we've got to go fight Olivia. I'm going to head my way to Coney City. I'm not going to need to pick up any TMs here. I can just make my way straight to the Sacred Grounds and go fight the kahuna of this island, Olivia. I am going into this fight at level 33 with Pin Missile, Brick Break, Rage, and Rest holding the Lumberry, because unfortunately I was not able to find a Chesto Berry, but this does end up going very wrong. Olivia leads off with her Nose Pass. My plan is just to use Rage and try to get some attack boosts from it using Rock Slide, but for some reason she ends up swapping into her Bulldor, which funnily enough, because of Rock Blast, is able to get my Rage counter up pretty high, but the problem is, I have non-existent defenses. Do you see the problem? Since I'm using a Lumberry instead of a Chesto Berry for Resto Chesto, the Lumberry is getting used up by Thunder Wave, which is very bad. I didn't save scum before any of the trees with Chesto Berries to try and get one, because I didn't think ahead enough at the time. Here's the thing, nowadays with my play, the most recent playthrough I just recorded for my Kanto Pokemon Moon series was actually Cantonian Raticate. I've gotten into the habit where on the first island, I will save scum the trees that give Orange, Chesto, and Cherry Berries. So unfortunately, because I don't have access to a Chesto Berry, I had to think of a completely different plan. And my new plan actually involves the Phytinium Z. My plan is to use one Brick Break on the Nose Pass to just break the Sturdy, and then use Rest if I need to while building up my Rage counter. Well, it isn't really a Rage counter, it just raises your attack stat. And then eventually, once the Nose Pass goes down, I can use All Out Plummeting on the Lycanroc to one-shot, and then the Bulldor will just be a simple 2-shot with Brick Break. Theoretically, I should use Pin Missile because Pin Missile could break the Sturdy, and I wasn't sure if I should do it. In the end, I decide to, and I get very fortunate and get the 5-hit Pin Missile. So yeah, that was very, very lucky. but my strat here definitely got ruined because of the lack of a Chesto Berry. I do now know for the future, Lum Berries for Olivia are not a substitute for Chesto Berries. And I go ahead and get myself an Olivia split of 1 hour, 32 minutes, and 41 seconds. That is a very bad Olivia split. But here's the thing, Butterfree needs to do SOS training as well. So let's go ahead and switch on over to Butterfree and just look at the major fights. The EVs that I am going to need for Butterfree by the end of the game are 20 HP, 48 defense, 144 special attack, and 152 speed. I don't need as much speed as Beedrill, but instead of needing attack, I need special attack. So instead of training on Pikipeks, I'm going to be training on Psyducks and Brookett Hill. Butterfree does get pretty similar luck for Munchlax as Beedrill did. It only took me about 3 minutes to find it. And then while I'm on this island, I'm going to get a few other things. I'm going to be getting the TM for Acrobatics, and before going to the next island, I'm actually going to be doing some SOS training on Zubats. You may be wondering why I'm doing the Speed EV training now while with Beedrill I didn't. You see, I need to get level 19, which level 19 gives me access to Psybeam. Without Psybeam, I'm going to have a very bad time at the Wishy-Washy trial, and since this is all EV training I would have to do anyway, it makes sense to just do this now just to get the levels for Psybeam. And with Psybeam on my moveset, I can just use Sleep Powder right away on the Wishy-Washy and then use either Psybeam or Silverwind. My plan is to use Silverwind first just because it gets the same type attack bonus, and maybe I'll get an Omni Boost, but sadly, the Wishy-Washy ends up being very cooperative. It does not use Soak on me. I take a lot of damage from Water Gun, and because of all that damage, I do get a loss here with Butterfree. It does take me a few more tries to beat the Wishy-Washy, I just had to wait for it to use Soak on me. I do make sure with both species, after I beat the Wishy-Washy, go back into Brookett Hill, surf with Lapras, and get yourself another rare candy. Thankfully, Butterfree, compared to Beedrill, will have an easier time doing the SOS training on the Marowak. Well, not really SOS training, more like just fighting him over and over again. I can use either a Psybeam or Hidden Power Ground. Unfortunately, Hidden Power Ground will not two-shot, even with the Expert Belt. So even if I get Curse Bodied on some of them, I can just switch on over to Psybeam. I continue the SOS training until I get level 26. The reason I need level 26 is because at 100 speed EVs at level 26, I will outspeed the Salazzle. This will allow me to get off the Sleep Powder before it could use something like Flame Burst. Then I can just use Psybeam to be a simple two-shot, or I just go Hidden Power Ground. Well, either or works. Sadly, the Salazzle gets up way too early, and I do get hit with Toxic, and then Venoshock will be hit on me from the Salandit. But Leftovers makes the fight safer than it needs to be, and Butterfree just has a way easier time here than Beedrill did. Lurantis is still an absolute joke, and before I go take on Olivia, I'm going to do SOS training in Brookett Hill on Psyduck. I get a level 15 Psyduck to red health, and my moveset here consists of the following: Acrobatics, Psybeam, Safeguard, and Sleep Powder. I actually bought the TM for Safeguard back in Hiya City. This is meant not only as a stalling move, but it also blocks confusion from moves like Confusion and Water Pulse. This can make the training go on for a very long time. Plus, Acrobatics and Psybeam have very good amounts of power points. I know Acrobatics is not that powerful when being held with an item, but because of the fact I outlevel them, it's still fine. I continue the Psyduck training until I get to 136 special attack EVs. I'm able to do the training for very long. I only had to leave like 2 or 3 separate times due to either blackouts or running out of power points and needing to heal at the center. Plus, on some of the trainers near Coney City, I can actually level up to level 31 and get myself the move Bug Buzz. With access to Tinted Lens as my ability, this will essentially hit almost everything in the game for at least neutral coverage. I do go back to Diglett's Tunnel though, just to fight a few Zubats. I'm not doing SOS training, I just need a little bit more speed. And now, we are ready to take on Olivia. I'm going into this fight holding the Silver Powder and then using Psybeam, Bug Buzz, Acrobatics, and Sleep Powder. Right away on turn 1, I need to use Sleep Powder on Nosepass, and it needs to stay asleep so I can two-shot it with Bug Buzz. The same thing needs to happen to Boldore. I am 4 times weak to rock moves, remember? I essentially cannot get hit by a move. The Nosepass likes to use Thunder Wave though, but I need access to the Silver Powder for ranges. I was supposed to do this Olivia fight at level 34, however, I decided to do the fight at level 33, and because of that, I cannot one-shot the Lycanroc with Bug Buzz, which always knocks me out. However, at level 34, I do have a range to one-shot. However though, it is still going to take a few more tries to defeat Olivia. And sadly, even though I did arrive at Olivia way faster than Beedrill did, because of how the fight went wrong, I only ended up beating her with a time of 1 hour, 39 minutes, and 18 seconds. Looking at these splits, Beedrill is ahead by roughly 6.5 minutes. It's only just widened its lead. However though, I'm not sure how much longer this can last though, because Beedrill will get access to Swords Dance, which should, in theory, greatly increase its lead, but at the same time, Butterfree is also going to get access to some very good moves as well, such as the TM for Psychic, as well as the setup move for Quiver Dance, including Stab Air Slash. So why don't we continue with Butterfree right now into the next island. The next island isn't as eventful as the second island. There's only 2 trials here, the Electric Trial and the Ghost Trial. The Ghost Trial is essentially the hardest trial in the entire game, and there's also the fight with Nanu as well, including a couple of fights with Guzma, but Guzma isn't going to be relevant for either of these guys today. On Ula Ula Island, I can make my way up to the top of Mount Hakanali, defeat Mullane pretty easily thanks to Tinted Lens, and then I can get the Comet Shard, and then sell it and buy some vitamins. And today's vitamin of the day is 5 iron. I'm already good to go on special attack and speed, I just need a little bit more defense. I also do buy some hyper potions here as well, just to have extra healing items. And with all the vitamins used, we gotta go take on the Totem Vikavolt. This should be more difficult for Butterfree compared to Beedrill because we are weak to electric moves, but we are going to outspeed Vikavolt and put it to sleep. Then we can use Bug Buzz to 2-shot, however it won't be a 2-shot anymore because the Vikavolt went for charge, boosting its special defense. This gives me my first blackout at this trial. I am able to beat him on the second try though. And with the electric trial down, we now have to take on the ghost trial. Before heading down the mountain though, I head down this little guardrail right here on the mountain and pick myself up another rare candy. Guzma inside of the Mali City Park is pretty easy, and then we can head our way towards the Aether House and then eventually to the ghost trial. Before I do the ghost trial though, there is a very interesting TM that I'm going to be getting. I have to defeat every trainer on this route where you get Mudstale, including a couple of different double battles, and I can beat this Root Kahuna right here and get myself the TM for Psych Up. I am going to be using this move to copy Mimikyu's Omni Boost. And you know what? Why don't we go ahead and see this move in action? Let's start the Mimikyu fight. I enter this fight with Psych Up, Bug Buzz, Shadow Ball, and Sleep Powder. You get access to Shadow Ball on the beach just before the Ghost Trial. On turn 1 though, I'm going to use Psych Up to copy the Omni Boost, and Mimikyu just misses a play rough. Then on the second turn, I'm going to go ahead and use Shadow Ball to break the disguise. I do outspeed thanks to my own Omni Boost. And then, using my own Omni Boost against the Mimikyu, it is unfortunately going to have to be a 2-shot with Shadow Ball, which is definitely not looking good, and the Haunter is able to knock me out from there. I do realize what I did wrong though. I should have put the Mimikyu to sleep after I used Psych Up. This will allow the Mimikyu to stay asleep while I do knock it out with Shadow Ball. I actually one-shot it when it's broken because the Shadow Ball actually got a special defense drop, so that was actually pretty convenient. Inside of Po Town, I can collect another rare candy. This rare candy is blocked off by a double battle, but if you remember to deposit your second Pokemon after having entered Po Town, because there's a mandatory double battle in order to enter Po Town, you can easily get the rare candy without doing the double battle. However, I ended up doing it anyway because I was too lazy to deposit my Munchlax. The one fortunate thing for both our contenders today is that both of them have a type advantage against Nanu, but Nanu is known for always getting in a fast one, so why don't we see how Butterfree takes him on. Butterfree goes into the fight with the Gracium Z, Psychic, Bug Buzz, Shadow Ball, and Sleep Powder. Right away on the Sableye, turn 1, we are going to use Z Sleep Powder. This will not only activate the Sleep Powder, but also give me +1 to my speed. This will allow me to make sure I outspeed the Persian. The Sableye will be a 2-shot with Bug Buzz. Then on the Persian, it does hit me with Fake Out, but then Bug Buzz 1-shots. And now we get access to one of our other most powerful moves, Air Slash. I'm going to go ahead and teach this in the place of Shadow Ball. And then last up is his Krokorok. It's going to be a simple 1-shot with Bug Buzz. And Butterfree beats Nanu at a time of 2 hours and 11 minutes flat. With Beedrill, I do something that is admittedly a pretty terrible idea. I tried to get the Attract TM inside the Hano Grand Resort too early. You have to do a double battle with 2 golfers with Oricorios. These 2 are actually surprisingly powerful if you don't do these people later. I don't really need Attract right now, so there's really no reason for me to get this. And I essentially just wasted my time. Inside of the Mali City Pokemon Center, I'm going to pick myself up 2 TMs, Roost and Swords Dance. Having access to Swords Dance is obviously going to be very beneficial for Beedrill. Plus having Roost for passive healing is good too. You may notice on my moveset, I have the move Brutal Swing. I actually got this TM south of the Lush Jungle. I forgot to mention it earlier, but there will come a moment pretty soon where I do need access to Dark type coverage. On top of Mount Hakanali for my vitamin of the day, I'm just going to purchase 4 Carbos and then 1 Iron. I already have all the attack I need. I'm still going to need some more speed EVs though. I don't have nearly enough. But with access to the Carbos, I can get my speed EVs up to 100, and then from here I can get the rest. I'm going to go inside the Verdant Cavern with False Swipe on my moveset, and then just SOS train on a bunch of Zubat. Thankfully, since False Swipe can never kill the opponent, it is a very good stalling move. And with leftovers and the fact that I'm super overleveled, there's no risk to doing this training right now. It's actually more efficient to do this after you get the vitamins. But the problem is, the only Pokemon that can really get away with doing this are Pokemon that learn False Swipe, which is why it can be a very useful move in Sun and Moon. You could theoretically still do this without False Swipe, maybe if you had a 4 times resisted move like Grass Knot or Hidden Power Grass. Sadly though, none of our contenders really had access to Grass Knot anyway, but it's not like they needed it. And with the training on the Zubats done on the Vikavolt, I'm going to go ahead and use 1 Poison Jab right away at level 36. Unfortunately, even with the Poison Barb, this will not be enough to one-shot, but thankfully I can just outspeed it and hit it with a second one. Physical attackers generally have it far better here than special attackers do, mainly because of the move Charge. Beedrill does not have access to Psych Up, so I gotta do a different plan for Mimikyu. My moveset going into the Mimikyu fight is Agility, Poison Jab, Swords Dance, and Brutal Swing. The main reason I have Brutal Swing is because it's essentially my best neutral coverage against both the Haunter and the Mimikyu. Unfortunately though, the first attempt doesn't go the best. I mean, that's to be expected of a Mimikyu fight. It does take me quite a few resets to win, but after 1 Swords Dance, Brutal Swing will one-shot the Haunter and break the disguise of the Mimikyu. Then on the Mimikyu, I go ahead and switch to Poison Jab, which will do neutral damage, and thanks to Stab with Poison Barb, it is enough to one-shot. My moveset is going to be pretty identical at Nanu. My moveset is Agility, Swords Dance, Protect, and X-Scissor. I'm going to use Protect on turn 1 to block the Fake Out, then use 1 Agility to make sure I outspeed the Persian. And I'm going to be using Silver Powder in addition to X-Scissor to guarantee I can one-shot the Persian. And the Krokorok after Intimidate brings me down to +1. The Sableye though does end up being the toughest Pokemon, but thankfully I am still able to win. And as soon as Beedrill defeats Nanu, Beedrill can get a split of 2 hours, 22 minutes, and 55 seconds. Holy crap, things really took a twist here. Beedrill went from being ahead by around 6.5 minutes to being behind by almost 12 minutes. It's not even funny. You know what essentially caused this? The fact that Butterfree just had a way smoother section on the 3rd island. And Butterfree had to get Psych Up for crying out loud. It's just a little unfortunate that Mimikyu went a lot worse. To be fair, this is looking way too brutal for Beedrill. I think Beedrill is going to suffer a lot worse when we get to the 4th island, because on Pawnee Island, Hapu, the ground type user, can actually deal decent damage on Beedrill, but guess what? Butterfree is immune to ground type moves because of flying type. So yeah, I think Beedrill is just going to suffer more and more, but only time will tell. We're going to switch on over to Beedrill now for the next section of the game. Both Pokemon though, before they can go to Pawnee Island, just have to clear out the Aether Foundation of all the trainers, plus the Guzma fight, as well as the first battle with Lusamine, which you're not required to win. I'm not really going to talk about either of these locations today, just because they generally play the same for a lot of Pokemon. You just want to teach a bunch of attacking moves, maybe have a Z Crystal for some of the harder fights. I will let you know though, that Beedrill did beat Lusamine. Poison defensively is very good in the Alola region because the Clefable can't really do anything to you. Unfortunately though, Beedrill, just as I mentioned with Hapu, is going to need a lot of luck. I'm going to be starting the fight at level 53, and unfortunately, when I start my first trainer on Pawnee Island, I'm going to fight against Ace Trainer Lindsay. She's the one with 2 poison types that is very difficult for a lot of Pokemon. Thankfully, resisting poison moves is a pretty good way of beating her. I'm only level 49 though, so I'm going to need to train about 3.5 levels. And as soon as I get myself to level 53, my moveset is going to have X-Scissor, Brick Break, and the move Attract, along with the Buginium Z. Let's take a look at how awful Hapu is going to be. Hapu leads off with Dugtrio. It outspeeds me right away and uses a Sandstorm, but that's fine, Brick Break will one-shot. Next up is the Mudsdale. I'm going to go ahead and use 1 Attract on it because I cannot let it kill me with Tectonic Rage. It does break through the Attract once, but thankfully just uses Heavy Slam instead. This will allow me to get the +2, use Savage Spin out on X-Scissor in order for that move to one-shot. Unfortunately though, with the Gastrodon, I accidentally did a misclick and used Attract on it instead of using X-Scissor, which was 100% my fault. I get to a total of 38 resets into the run until I can get the same luck that I had on Hapu earlier, defeat the Gastrodon and the Flygon with X-Scissor, and get myself the Groundium Z. I'm not going to change at the Hapu split yet because you generally fight Hapu pretty early right after Nanu compared Olivia to Nanu. So we're going to go ahead and go back to Butterfree basically as soon as we're ready to fight the final 8 trainers starting at Lusamine number 2. We need to talk about the vast Pawnee Canyon though, including the very first trainer, the veteran with 2 fire types. My plan here is to use Attract, 1 Swords Dance, and then 2-shot the Torkoal with Poison Jab. The Oka Berry is to basically prevent the first Heat Wave from doing way too much damage. But unfortunately, even though I have the Oka Berry, my bulk is just so bad, it's not enough sometimes. The way to win this fight is you just have to use 2 Swords Dances. I lost the first fight because I only ended up getting 1 Swords Dance. But thankfully, with Harry defeated, that's his name by the way, Veteran Harry, I can go ahead and train on the rest of these trainers. Normally what I like to do in the vast Pawnee Canyon, I will fight most of the trainers and wild Pokemon here, train up to a certain level, then use all of my candies right before Lusamine 2 to get to the level I need for the endgame. And the level that I need for Lusamine is level 71, which if I have all 12 of my rare candies still, which with this Pokemon I do, I need to train to level 59. That is going to be quite a lot of trainers and wild Pokemon, and you gotta remember, trainers do not give boosted experience in Gen 7 anymore, they got rid of that. And after I defeat a lot of the trainers, including a ton of wild Pokemon, I line up my experience just right to where by the time I finish off the canyon with the Komodo trial, I can defeat the Komodo and get myself to level 59. Then I can use 12 candies to get to level 71. And by the time I start the cutscene in the Ultra Spaced Wilds to defeat Lusamine again to start the final 8 trainers, I have a time of 3 hours, 6 minutes, and 27 seconds. We're going to go back to Butterfree and see how Butterfree handles Hapu and the vast Pawnee Canyon before we go back and forth with both of them for the final 8 trainers. The Aether Foundation goes so smoothly for Butterfree, I don't get a single reset or blackout in the entire thing, including beating Lusamine. On Pawnee Island, I do need an Oka Berry for Harry as well, and I actually get it first try, so no need to save scum it today. And the level I'm going to need for Hapu, instead of level 53, it's only level 51, because not only we're immune to ground moves, at level 47 we get arguably one of the best setup moves ever made, Quiver Dance. This boosts your special attack, special defense, and speed by 1 stage. When I have this move on Hapu, I can go ahead and use a couple of quiver dances on the Gastrodon. I don't want to set it up on the Doug Trio because it can do a lot of damage with Iron Head. And thankfully, Muddy Water doesn't really do that much. It could lower my accuracy, which is always a huge negative, but that's fine though. As soon as I get the setup that I need, I can one-shot the Flygon and the Mudstale. However, I was going to one-shot the Mudstale, but I missed a lot thanks to Muddy Water. Great. It took a few more tries, but I am able to defeat her. Looking back, maybe I should have held some sort of item to block the accuracy drops, but I don't think such an item exists. Maybe I could hold like Bright Powder or something, but that would have honestly just been a waste of an item slot. Starting in the Vazpani Canyon on Veteran Harry, I'm supposed to use the Oka Berry, but I ended up forgetting to equip it, but thankfully Sleep Powder just cooperates instead. For my final level for Lusamine 2, I need to use my rare candies to get to level 72, so with 12 rare candies, I need to get level 60. This is unfortunately a higher level than Beedrill needed, but that's fine though. I've built such a great lead at this point, I think I'm pretty much just fine. I did have to do a lot of wild Pokemon training though. It was very unfortunate. However though, instead of training to level 60, I decided to stop at level 59 and just see if I could beat Lusamine without using the candies. I probably could have done that earlier, but here's the thing. The Vazpani Canyon has the best training in the entire game at this point, mainly because of the levels of the wild Pokemon. So I was going to need to do this training anyway, whether it was before or after Lusamine, and Butterfree prepares to fight Lusamine with a real time of 2 hours, 54 minutes, and 15 seconds. So right now, Butterfree is ahead of Beedrill by roughly the same amount of time as during the Nanu split, roughly 12 minutes. Unfortunately, I just do not see a way Beedrill can make up this time. Both of these Pokemon had quite a bit of blackouts and quite a few resets as well. But I think what's keeping Butterfree ahead of Beedrill, I think is just simply the fact that Butterfree gets Sleep Powder and is immune to ground type moves. Plus, I think Quiver Dance is a better setup move than Swords Dance, even though Quiver Dance comes at a lot later of a level than the availability of the Swords Dance TM. But either way, right now we are ready to take on the final 8 trainers. We're going to go over each one pretty much back to back. We'll talk about how Butterfree deals with her, then Beedrill, then we'll do the same thing with Gladion, how, and then the final 5 trainers. So let's get on with it. Right away on Lusamine, I go ahead and just set up some Quiver Dances on the Clefable. Thanks to the fact that I'm getting a special defense boost every time I use this move, her Moonblasts aren't doing too much. Then I can go ahead and use the Buginium Z and use Savage Spin Out on the Clefable. Unfortunately, this does allow it to live, but it does ignore a lot of the cosmic powers that it used. And with access to Tinted Lens, Bugbuzz can hit the rest of her team for neutral damage, and she ends up being very easy because of that. Beedrill, on the other hand, is going to have an even better time here, because here's the thing, I resist Moonblast, and even though Moonblast can lower my special attack, it's not going to matter anyway. I can go ahead and use one Swords Dance, then knock it out with one use of Poison Jab. Then I can use X-Scissor on the Mismagius and the Melodic. Fourth up is going to be the Beware. This is the reason I have the Poisonium Z. Acid Downpour, along with every other Z move, does not make contact, which actually ignores the defense boost that Beware's ability Fluffy gives it with physical contact moves. On Gladion, I actually have another held item. I also got a Koba Berry in addition to the Oka Berry. The Koba Berry reduces super effective flying type coverage. This will allow me to survive one turn of acrobatics pretty easily, while I set up a Quiver Dance and then prepare to sweep the rest of his team. Unfortunately though, I do get a reset just because by the time I get to the Weavile, my health is too low and it can use the priority Ice Shard. Funnily enough, on the second attempt, he used Cross Poison turn 1 instead of acrobatics, so I'm able to set up an extra Quiver Dance, and at very low HP, I am able to barely survive the rest of his team and defeat Gladion. And just like with Butterfree, Beedrill also has the Koba Berry. However, I have to take things even worse. I have to use Attract on the Crobat. This is the only way to make sure that I can have a Swords Dance set up for the rest of his team. Thankfully though, it only took 2 tries to beat him, and before I climb up Mount Lanikia, I do fight some wild Pokemon to get a bit of XP to get to level 72. This is the minimum level Beedrill needs to start the Elite Four at. Alrighty, how time. Right now on the Raichu, I can go ahead and use Bug Buzz for the one hit, Then on Flareon, I go for Bug Buzz. It survives in red health and completely one-shots me with Flare Blitz. Okay then, I guess I need a Quiver Dance. On the second attempt, I don't even end up using Quiver Dance because I guess I'm an idiot or something. Wait, no, I'm not an idiot. I just glanced back at my route to see why am I blacking out to him over and over. Here's the thing, I need level 73 in order to beat him and to make sure I get level 74 for Kukui. Because 74 for Kukui is the minimum level I need in order to defeat him. And if I enter the league at level 72 or 72.5, I will not get access to that level. All of these EVs are planned for Professor Kukui. I stop all the blackout training as soon as I get to level 73, which is when I can properly do the fight and just knock out the rest of his team pretty easily. With Beedrill, I'm going to go ahead and use a turn 1 Swords Dance on the Raichu, and unfortunately Psychic not only does massive damage, but it also lowers my special defense. But hopefully that'll be fine. I can one-shot the Flareon with Poison Jab, the Kamala with Poison Jab, and then on the Primarina, I'm going to do a purposeful blackout. I'm going to use Swords Dance instead of Poison Jab. Just like with Butterfree, I'm going to need level 73 for Professor Kukui. I did one blackout essentially just to guarantee I can get that level. Although looking back at this, that one blackout was definitely unnecessary. I think I could have just made it in just fine. Anyway, with all those 3 difficult fights out of the way, we are now ready to take on the final 5 trainers. Let's do this shit. With Butterfree, the first member of the Elite Four I take on is Hala. He leads off with Hariyama. I'm going to go ahead and use one Quiver Dance as it uses knockoff but fails because of the Normalium Z not being able to get knocked off. +1 with Quiver Dance is enough to one-shot his entire team with Air Slash. Beedrill is also going to do a pretty similar strategy. I'm going to go into the fight with no held item, use one Swords Dance, and completely destroy his team with Acrobatics. Even the Beware does not like getting hit with physical contact moves because of Fluffy. But here's the thing, what's it going to do to me? A 4 times resisted fighting move? Yeah, right. For Butterfree, the next member of the Elite Four I take on is Kahili, the flying type user. Kahili leads off with Skarmory. It doesn't even have a flying type move, which is just very pathetic. I can set up 2 Quiver Dances, then I'm going to go ahead and use one Air Slash and hope for a flinch. Unfortunately, I don't really get it, and by the time I arrive at the Mandibuzz, I'm at very low HP. Thankfully, I'm pretty confident Bug Buzz will one-shot the rest of her team. Unfortunately though, I don't outspeed the Crobat because that Crobat has 196 speed, which is the fastest Pokemon in the game. I don't really ever try to outspeed that thing with most Pokemon because its moveset isn't really the best. For some reason though, on the second attempt, Butterfree actually outspeeds the Crobat, which to be honest, I have no idea why. I'm not even holding the Grassium Z for a +1 speed boost. I'm not even sure what I did to outspeed that thing. Maybe you guys can let me know in the comments, but I just don't know how that happened. I thought it had Whirlwind or something, but it doesn't. Oh well though, at least I beat Kahili. For Beedrill, the next member of the Elite Four I take on is Acerola, the Ghost type Elite Four member. Beedrill is going to follow a very similar playbook to the Hala fight. I'm going to go ahead and use one Swords Dance and just spam itemless Acrobatics. As I mentioned at the start of the video, Acrobatics without an item is an effective power of 110. This is very powerful, enough to essentially make circles around most of her team. Except the Palossand, that thing is basically all defense. It does take 2 tries to beat her, but I do end up beating Acerola. And we're going to go ahead and stick with Beedrill now because it is Beedrill's turn to take on Kahili. Instead of itemless Acrobatics, we're actually going into this fight with Roost, Brick Break, and Poison Jab. Roost is just to make sure I can keep my health high, because I have to do a bunch of setup with Swords Dance. And you want to know something very unfortunate? The Crobat does hit me with Supersonic when I knock it out, and I actually hit myself in confusion on the Mandibuzz, causing me to knock myself out. However, just like with Acerola, I am able to win on the second try. And now, Beedrill and Butterfree need to take on Olivia, but before they can take on Olivia, Butterfree still needs to take on Acerola. Butterfree has access to the spell tag, giving it a 20% boost to ghost type moves, and with one Quiver Dance, Shadow Ball can just completely destroy her entire team in a series of one-shots. Alright, now it is time for Butterfree and Beedrill to take on Olivia yet again. Let's start off with Beedrill. Against the Relicanth on turn 1, I'm going to go ahead and use a couple of Swords Dances and then fall asleep to rest. There's unfortunately nothing I can really do about this, but that is the reason why I have Roost. Unfortunately, I do stay asleep for far too long and get a quick reset. As soon as I am able to wake up though, at +4, I can defeat her Relicanth and Lycanroc with Brick Break. Then with the Poisonium Z, I'm going to Acid Downpour on the Carbink for a one-shot. Next up is the Probopass followed by the Golem. They are going to be two-shots no matter what thanks to Sturdy, but with access to Roost, I am able to defeat both of them. With Butterfree, I have an even better solution. With the Buginium Z, I can just put it to sleep, use a Quiver Dance, then I'm going to use one Bug Buzz to knock out the Relicanth. I use a Bug Buzz for the Lycanroc as well. You may be wondering what the Buginium Z is for. The answer is also for the Carbink. Using Savage Spin Out at +1, I'm able to knock out the Carbink, even though it resists. Then the Probopass and the Golem are essentially the same as with Butterfree. They're going to be two shots no matter what you do, but at least I can use Sleep Powder and make sure they don't try to do too much to me. Unfortunately though, Butterfree doesn't have the best of Sleep Powder luck on the Probopass and the Golem, and it does take a few tries to knock out Olivia's final two Pokemon, but I am able to eventually knock them out, and now both Pokemon are going to head towards Professor Kukui. So let's go ahead and finish these runs, starting with Butterfree. My final moveset is Bug Buzz, Quiver Dance, Sleep Powder, and Safeguard. What I'm going to do here is use one Quiver Dance because I cannot outspeed the Lycanroc, and since I cannot outspeed the Lycanroc, I am going to get hit with a Stone Edge that kills me. So I need to get an attempt where it misses turn 1 Stone Edge, so that way I can use one Quiver Dance. At 31 resets into the run, I am able to get a Lycanroc Stone Edge miss, and then I can knock it out with Bug Buzz. Next up is the Braviary. I gotta put it to sleep because it is not going to be a one-shot with Bug Buzz. Oh, never mind, I guess I was being dumb. The Incineroar is a one-shot with Bug Buzz. Next up is the Ninetales. It is a one-shot with Bug Buzz, and you may wonder why I have Safeguard. It's for the Magnezone. It is to block turn 1 Thunder Wave. It is going to hit me with Thunderbolt, but I would much rather get hit with Thunderbolt than a Thunder Wave. Eventually, after all the full restores go away, the Magnezone can go down, and then on the Snorlax, I'm going to have to use 2 Bug Buzzes, although my health does get dangerously low. I really should have used a Sleep Powder on it, but oh well. Butterfree is able to clock in with a real time of 3 hours, 15 minutes, and 5 seconds, with 31 resets, 28 blackouts at level 75, with a game time after the long ass credits of 12 hours and 15 minutes. Okay, time for Beedrill. Thankfully, I am not 4 times weak to rock moves, but because of the fact my defense is so low, Stone Edge is still going to kill me. My held item for this fight is going to be a Cherry Berry to block the Thunder Wave because unfortunately, I don't have Safeguard. My moveset though is Attract, Brick Break, Swords Dance, and Poison Jab. I'm going to use Attract on the Lycanroc after a Stone Edge miss, then I can go ahead get to +2 and then one shot with Brick Break. Next up is the Braviary. I can Poison Jab that and the Incineroar as well, which is actually not the right choice. I was supposed to use Brick Break. That was an accident. The next time I am able to defeat the Lycanroc though, I use Brick Break on the Incineroar and the Ninetales that follows it, quickly take down Magnezone, and then the final Snorlax and clock in as well, with a real time of 3 hours, 24 minutes, and 15 seconds, with 46 resets, 21 blackouts at level 75, with a game time after the long ass credits of 12 hours and 28 minutes. Alright everyone, we've got ourselves a winner. The winner of this race was actually Butterfree. If we take a look at the tier list, Butterfree got itself a spot at the bottom of the F tier, barely beating Pokemon like Decidueye and Simisear, and Decidueye wasn't allowed to use Z moves when I played it. Beedrill though is in the middle of the Komodo tier. It did get a better time than Houndoom and Porygon, but it did get a slower time than Guzzlord of all things, and Guzzlord was so horrendously bad. And if you take a look at the resets and blackouts, you can definitely see that a lot of the Pokemon in these lower tiers had a massive amount of resets and blackouts, plus needing a bunch of EV training. Some of you may think this EV training wasn't necessary and I just bloated a lot of time, but you saw how bad some of those ranges and outspeeds were, right? If we didn't have those EVs, we would have needed an even higher level, which if we were doing training in the Pawnee Canyon, or just blacking out in the league over and over again, it would have taken a lot longer just to get those extra levels than just spending some time early on doing SOS training. And besides, you can combine SOS training with training that you need for the kahunas anyway, so it's like killing 2 Pidgeys with 1 Geodude. But anyway, I hope y'all enjoyed this first versus race of Pokemon Moon. Expect a lot more to come throughout the year. Thanks for watching, comment, like, and subscribe if you want to see more, and be sure to follow me on my socials or support the channel through YouTube memberships. YouTube members get access to the patch files for all the backports we do on stream, in addition to members-only content and unedited first playthroughs. Both Butterfree and Beedrill's first runs will be uploaded as members-only videos. Next week, we're going to be doing the Route 1 Birds of Kanto, Pidgeot versus Fearow. Those are going to be nowhere near as bad as these two, but they'll still have their own problems. Normal types have not been treated kindly in Alola, but that'll be next week's problem. I will see you all then.